First Contact's folly. The Craxian warships emerged from hyperspace like obsidian daggers cutting through Earth's azure sky. Their angular vessels, each nearly 3 miles long, cast vast shadows over major cities worldwide. Supreme Admiral Zorn stood on his flagship's bridge, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline command console as he watched humanity's primitive civilization through enhanced viewing screens. Pathetic, he mumbled, his secondary breathing vents flaring with contempt. Not a single orbital defense platform. No energy shields. They still use combustion engines. He turned to his chief strategist, Commander Vex, whose silver scales rippled with anticipation. Are you certain they pose no threat? Absolutely, Supreme Admiral. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear devices, practically stone tools compared to our quantum arsenal. Their military response capabilities are fractured across national boundaries. They'll surrender within hours. James Sullivan, Earth's hastily appointed diplomatic liaison, watched this exchange from his designated observer's post on the bridge. At 53, with graying temples and laugh lines earned from decades in international diplomacy, he maintained a carefully neutral expression while documenting every word in his neural tablet. His apparent calm masked the secret satisfaction of watching the Craxians make every mistake in the book. They'd arrived 3 days ago, demanding Earth's immediate surrender. Their terms were simple: submit to Craxian rule, hand over all resources, and accept status as a protectorate species. In return, they'd allow humans to continue existing. The UN Security Council's response had also been simple: stall for time. Supreme Admiral, Sullivan spoke up, his voice carrying the precise mix of deference and dignity that had made him legendary in diplomatic circles. Perhaps we could discuss the finer points of your resource acquisition protocols? I have several questions about Section 7.3 regarding planetary mining rights. Zorn's upper lip curled in what passed for a smile among his species. Always with the questions, human. Your kind's obsession with procedural details is almost amusing. He gestured to the main viewport, where Hong Kong's skyline stretched below them. Look at your primitive structures. Your species still builds with steel and concrete while we shape quantum-stabilized dark matter. Sullivan nodded thoughtfully while adding another note: superiority complex, check. Technological arrogance, check. Complete failure to read the fine print, check. The Craxians had made the classic mistake of assuming technological advancement equaled tactical superiority. They hadn't bothered to conduct deep scans of Earth's subsurface installations. They hadn't noticed that humanity's apparent technological backwardness didn't match their level of social development. Most importantly, they hadn't questioned why Earth's military forces remained in their bases, making no move to either fight or flee. I understand your position completely, Sullivan said, allowing a hint of resignation to color his tone. Though I do have one final question, if you'll permit it? Zorn waved a scaled hand magnanimously. Ask your question, human. Then we will proceed with the formal surrender ceremony. Thank you, Supreme Admiral. I was just wondering, have you ever heard of something called the Internet? The question caught Zorn off guard. Some primitive communication network, yes? Our analysts mentioned it in passing. Sullivan smiled for the first time since coming aboard. Interesting. And did those analysts happen to mention that we've been live-streaming this entire conversation to about 4 billion people? The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of the ship's engines seemed to pause. Live streaming? Zorn's scales shifted to a paler shade. Oh yes. Including all those lovely comments about primitive species and stone tools. The feed's being translated into 147 languages in real time. I believe the hashtag #Craxiansfail is trending worldwide. Sullivan checked his tablet. Make that galaxy-wide. Apparently, someone figured out how to bounce the signal off your own communication network. Commander Vex rushed to his console, fingers flying over the controls. Supreme Admiral, he speaks the truth. Our communications have been compromised. They've been using our own quantum relays to broadcast. Impossible. Zorn's scales flushed dark with rage. These primitives couldn't possibly. Oh, that's not even the best part, Sullivan interrupted, thoroughly enjoying himself now. You see, while you've been focused on our primitive surface technology, you might want to check what's happening to your ship's systems. As if on cue, the bridge lights flickered. The main viewport switched to a display of dancing cat videos. Somewhere in the ship's bowels, the artificial gravity hiccuped. You see, Sullivan continued, the thing about humans is, we're really good at multitasking. And while I've been up here asking annoying questions about mining rights, about 10 million teenage hackers have been treating your network security as the ultimate video game challenge. I believe they're calling it Hack the Aliens Any % Speedrun. The bridge erupted into chaos as system after system began failing. Sullivan stood calmly in the center of it all, still making notes. Just one more thing, he added, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the alarms. You might want to look out the window. The view's about to get interesting. As Zorn turned to the viewport, his scales went completely white. Rising from hidden silos and underwater bases around the globe, humanity's real military technology was finally revealing itself. It turned out that Earth's primitive civilization had simply been very, very good at hiding its capabilities. And they weren't primitive at all. The silent strategy. Commander Diana Rodriguez stood in the heart of Earth's Defense Command, a vast underground complex beneath the Andes Mountains. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing real-time data from the ongoing operation. At 45, with her dark hair streaked with silver and eyes sharp from decades of military service, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying across the bustling command center. Dr. Aidan Park, her head of cyber operations, looked up from his neural interface. His fingers danced through the air, manipulating invisible data streams. Phase 1 is complete, Commander. Sullivan's distraction worked perfectly. Our distributed AI network has fully infiltrated their systems. They still think they're dealing with human hackers. Excellent. Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. And the quantum shield network? Online and ready. The Craxians still haven't detected the nanite mesh we've woven through Earth's atmosphere. As far as they're concerned, we're completely defenseless. That had been the key to their strategy, appearing vulnerable while secretly preparing Earth's defenses. For years, humanity had maintained the facade of a relatively primitive civilization, all while developing technologies that would make any alien race pause. What about our friends in orbit? Rodriguez asked, gesturing to a holographic display showing the Craxian fleet. Lieutenant Sophia Chen, tactical officer, stepped forward. They're starting to realize something's wrong, but they can't figure out what. Their internal communications are a mess. Our quantum AI has them chasing shadows through their own systems. Rodriguez nodded, watching as another section of the alien fleet's defense grid went dark. The plan was working perfectly, death by 1,000 digital cuts. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Across the globe, hidden installations hummed to life. The real show was about to begin. Digital deception. Dr. Aidan Park's fingers flew across multiple holographic interfaces as he orchestrated humanity's digital assault. The Craxian supposedly superior technology was proving to be their greatest weakness. They'd never imagined that a primitive species would be capable of such sophisticated cyber warfare. Their quantum encryption is failing, he announced, his voice steady despite the excitement coursing through him. They built their entire network on the assumption that no one could crack their codes. They never considered that we might have developed quantum computing in secret. On the main display, red warning indicators were spreading across the alien fleet like a virus. Their ship systems were being compromised one by one, not by brute force, but by elegant lines of code that slipped through their defenses like digital ghosts. "You should see what the AI is doing to their navigation systems," Lieutenant Chen commented, unable to hide her grin. "It's convinced 3 of their destroyers that they're actually luxury cruise ships scheduled for maintenance in the Andromeda Galaxy." Park allowed himself a small chuckle. "The beauty of it is, they still think they're fighting human hackers. They haven't realized that our quantum AI evolved beyond our own understanding years ago. We just pointed it at the problem and let it work." Commander Rodriguez watched as another alien vessel's weapon systems went offline. "How long until total system compromise?" "At current rates?" Park consulted his data streams. 20 minutes, maybe less. "Their automated defenses are trying to adapt, but our AI is evolving faster than their systems can respond. It's like watching a chess grandmaster play against a child." Suddenly, alarms blared across the command center. Park's hands flew to his controls, his expression tightening. "They're attempting a full system purge. They're going to try to reset their entire network." Rodriguez remained calm. "Will it work?" A slow smile spread across Park's face. "No. Because we're not just in their computers anymore." He gestured to a microscopic display showing the nanite swarm they'd seeded throughout the alien fleet. "These ships have been breathing our technology for days. Every time they cycled their air filtration systems, they pulled in more of our nanites. Their entire fleet is essentially running on our hardware now." The attempted system purge failed spectacularly. Across the Craxian fleet, ships began powering down, their crews trapped inside as life support systems transferred to emergency power under Earth's control. "Send the message," Rodriguez ordered. Park nodded, transmitting the carefully prepared communication to every screen and speaker in the alien fleet. Supreme Admiral Zorn's face appeared on their main display, his scales now a sickly pale color. What are you?" he demanded, his previous arrogance replaced by fear. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. "We are humanity, Supreme Admiral. And you should have read the fine print. Your surrender terms are being transmitted now. I suggest you read them carefully this time." The message was clear: humanity had been playing a very, very long game. While the galaxy thought they were seeing a primitive species taking its first steps into space, they had actually been watching a masterclass in strategic deception. And now, the deception was complete. The hunters had become the hunted, undone by their own hubris and humanity's patience. Park's quantum interfaces sparkled with data as the Craxian fleet's systems came fully under Earth's control. "Would you like me to show them what else we can do?" he asked, his fingers hovering over the controls. Rodriguez shook her head. "No need. I think they've learned their lesson about underestimating primitive species." On the main display, Supreme Admiral Zorn's scales had shifted to the Craxian equivalent of absolute terror. He had finally realized the truth: he hadn't been leading an invasion. He'd been walking into a trap. Underground Rising. Liam O'Connor moved silently through the subterranean corridors of what had once been London's underground. Now, these centuries-old tunnels served as command centers for Earth's resistance network. As head of ground operations, he coordinated the human response teams that would deploy if the digital warfare failed. "Status report from New Delhi," his assistant Marcus Wong announced, holding up a holographic display. "The quantum shield network is holding steady. The Craxians still can't detect our ground forces." Liam nodded, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. At 38, he'd spent the last decade helping prepare Earth's hidden defense network. And the special packages? In position beneath every major Craxian landing site. If Commander Rodriguez gives the order, we can activate the gravity pulse generators. They won't be going anywhere. The underground, as they called it now, wasn't just a resistance network, it was humanity's insurance policy. While Park and his team handled the cyber warfare, O'Connor's people were ready to handle things the old-fashioned way if necessary. Message from topside, Marcus announced. Sullivan says the Craxians are starting to panic. Their attempts to regain control of their systems have failed completely. Liam allowed himself a grim smile. About time they realized who they're really dealing with. Status of the ground teams? Ready to deploy at a moment's notice. The powered armor units are charged and prepped. Emergency response teams are on standby at all major cities. They'd spent years preparing, hiding their true capabilities beneath a veneer of primitive technology. The Craxians thought they were dealing with a species that barely understood space flight. They had no idea that humanity had mastered gravity manipulation, quantum computing, and neural interface technology decades ago. "Sir," Marcus called out suddenly. Energy spike detected in the Craxian fleet. They're trying to power up their main weapons. Liam's hand moved to his neural interface. "Commander Rodriguez, are you seeing this?" "We see it," her voice came through clearly. "Initiating Phase 3. Stand by for possible ground deployment." Victory's price. Hannah Williams, UN Special Envoy, stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her diplomatic credentials granting her the right to speak for humanity. The vast chamber, filled with representatives from hundreds of spacefaring civilizations, had fallen into stunned silence. "Members of the Council," she began, her voice steady and clear, "we come before you today not to seek justice for the unprovoked invasion of our world, but to propose a new way forward." The holographic displays behind her showed the Craxian fleet, now completely under Earth's control. Supreme Admiral Zorn stood to the side, his scales still pale with shock. "For centuries, humanity has watched the galaxy. We observed how stronger species often prey upon those they consider primitive or weak. We saw the pattern, and we made our choice, to hide our true capabilities until they were needed." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The revelation that Earth had been far more advanced than anyone suspected had sent shockwaves through galactic society. The Craxian invasion fleet now stands powerless in our orbit, defeated not by violence, but by preparation and technology they didn't believe we possessed. We could destroy them. Instead, we offer mercy. Supreme Admiral Zorn's scales shifted in surprise. Hannah continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber.